almost 10 years after Brexit, winners, losers, and global consequences. It has now been nearly a decade since the United Kingdom made the historic choice to leave the European Union. As I walk along a quiet street in London, reflecting on the immense changes that have swept across not only Britain but the entire globe, I can't help but marvel at the complexity and far-reaching consequences of Brexit. This documentary narrative takes us on a journey through economic shifts, political upheavals, and the deep social transformations that have affected communities as diverse as the Spaniards in Madrid, Latin American business leaders in São Paulo, and everyday citizens all over Europe. As I recount the stories and present the analysis, my reflections are imbued with a blend of personal opinion and professional curiosity, seeking to unveil who truly emerged as winners or suffered as losers in this turbulent era. Brexit was not a decision made in isolation. Born from decades of Euroscepticism and intensified by economic debates and identity politics, the vote to leave the European Union was, for many, a longing for national independence and a promise of regained control over domestic affairs. In the years following the referendum, renowned figures such as Prime Ministers David Cameron, Theresa May, and Boris Johnson each left their distinct political imprints on the unfolding drama. While Cameron's resignation and May's heartfelt but ultimately stuttering attempts to negotiate a seamless transition remain etched in political memory, Johnson's gregarious approach to a hard Brexit decision catalyzed both fervor and controversy. The narrative of Brexit has been interwoven with the personal ambitions and strategic maneuvers of these figures, often leaving behind a trail of both economic winners and political losers. At the heart of Brexit's story lies the economic repercussions that have shaped international trade and investment. In the aftermath, the United Kingdom's financial district, once synonymous with unfettered global connectivity, saw immediate ripples in trading volumes and a reshuffling of corporate headquarters. Prestigious institutions such as HSBC and investment conglomerates like Standard Chartered faced intricate regulatory challenges, forcing them to reconfigure European operations. Simultaneously, British manufacturing giants such as Rolls-Royce experienced significant disruptions in their supply chains, leaving many to question the viability of previously established economic relationships. As I recount these developments, I imagine boardrooms filled with anxious executives deliberating over contingency plans and recalibrating long-term forecasts to account for an unpredictable future. This economic turbulence was by no means contained within the British borders. In Madrid, I met with a group of Spanish economists who explained that while Spanish exporters initially feared the breakdown of a once fluid supply chain, some of them eventually discovered new opportunities by targeting the British consumer market. They produced statistics that highlighted a 5% increase in bilateral trade between Spain and the United Kingdom in specific sectors such as olive oil, wine, and aerospace components over the past few years. For Spaniards, Brexit became a double-edged sword, a source of uncertainty for those reliant on the previous EU regulatory regime, yet a gateway for others to establish niche markets in this emergent trade landscape. Turning the lens to Latin America, analysts in São Paulo detailed how Brexit catalyzed a reorientation of international alliances. Companies with strong transatlantic ties, like Brazil's Embraer, which has historically partnered with European firms, began to reshape their global strategies. In countless interviews, Latin American business leaders expressed both regret and optimism. They lamented that Britain's withdrawal from the EU had disrupted traditional investment channels and altered currency dynamics, yet they also heralded it as an opportunity for emerging markets to strengthen ties with the UK. A recurring theme was change, an era marked by the fluidity of power and the necessity to adapt to rapidly evolving geopolitical circumstances. Political analysts across Europe have debated whether Brexit was an exercise in patriotism or a strategic miscalculation. In Brussels, discussions took place in the corridors of the European Commission, with President Jean-Claude Juncker's legacy often invoked as a symbol of a more integrated Europe. European politicians, including figures like Donald Tusk, have argued that Brexit represents not merely a severance from a political union, but a manifestation of rising populist movements that challenge established norms in Europe and beyond. This debate continues to color the political landscape, with policy reforms aimed at preventing a domino effect of secessionist sentiments from taking place in other member states. The political schism that followed the vote remains a sensitive subject, especially when viewed through the prism of national identity versus supranational unity. In the United Kingdom itself, the social fabric has also been deeply altered. Communities once united by a shared cultural heritage now find themselves divided by a lingering sense of loss and uncertainty. In a small town in northern England, I walked past a mural commemorating the once united European family, a symbolic rendering that seemed to capture both nostalgia and melancholy. Many citizens, whose identities had been interwoven with the broader European community, expressed sorrow over the perceived erosion of cultural solidarity. For others, particularly those who viewed Brexit as a long overdue reclamation of national autonomy, change was embraced wholeheartedly, even as they recognized that economic hardships in certain regions demanded novel forms of social cohesion and support. As I reflect on these experiences, my own perspective has shifted from detached analysis to a more empathetic understanding of the human stories embedded within the statistics and headlines. I recall late evening discussions with former colleagues in journalism, whose voices echo concerns over the growing economic disparities and political polarization that have accompanied this episode in history. There is an undeniable sadness in witnessing communities fractured by ideologies that once were meant to secure a peaceful coexistence within a unified framework. Yet, underlying that sadness is a call to action, a reminder that in an increasingly interconnected world, our fates are too closely linked to be considered separately. In this intricate tapestry of winners and losers, some sectors undeniably profited from Brexit's ripple effects. British venture capital and technology startups found new freedoms in markets unencumbered by previous EU constraints. Entrepreneurs who once felt stifled by bureaucracy now celebrated increased agility and the opening of niche opportunities, particularly in the fintech arena. Simultaneously, investment in renewable energy and environmental technology surged as companies sought to align with the rising global momentum towards sustainability. Key players such as the British multinational energy firm BP redirected considerable resources toward green initiatives, positioning themselves as responsible market actors in a new era of accountability. These developments attest to the transformative potential of crisis, where even the most contentious political events can pave the way for innovative breakthroughs. At the same time, many traditional industries experience profound setbacks. The financial services sector, long grateful for the fluid movement of capital across borders, saw its net income fall by nearly 10% in the initial years following Brexit. Concerns over regulatory divergence and an uncertain legal framework led to a temporary exodus of talent and capital from London. European counterparts in Frankfurt, Paris, and Dublin gained market share by successfully positioning themselves as reliable hubs for corporate headquarters and financial intermediaries. The displacement of commerce from the UK's historic centres of power evoked not only economic challenges, but also a significant sense of loss for an entire generation that had built its identity on global financial leadership. Economic statistics, peppered with figures and percentages, only tell part of the story. Behind every number lies the impact on human lives. I recall an interview with a longtime factory worker in the West Midlands, whose company had been a cornerstone of the local economy for decades. He described the shifts in his community after companies reallocated resources and supply chains questioned long-held commercial loyalties. His narrative, filled with equal parts nostalgia and pragmatic reckoning, epitomized the silent struggle that many faced during this period of transformation. As he recounted memories of bustling factories and communal pride, I could almost see the interplay of hope and disillusionment etched on the faces of those who dared to hope for a better future, only to grapple with the stark reality of economic decline. In the realm of politics and social cohesion, the post-Brexit era has opened debates regarding identity, sovereignty, and the meaning of community in a globalized world. The United Kingdom's redefined role on the world stage has been a subject of much introspection by both political observers and ordinary citizens. While some herald Brexit as a bold step towards reclaiming national pride, others see it as a retreat from the ideals of shared European progress and mutual responsibility. Political rallies, academic forums, and televised panel discussions have become the battlegrounds where these divergent visions are passionately contested. A palpable tension exists between a desire to preserve cultural independence and the pragmatic acknowledgement that in matters of trade, security, and innovation, collaboration remains indispensable. As I delved deeper into conversations with European social researchers, I encountered a recurring theme, the notion of regret. In southern Europe, especially in regions of Italy and Spain where cross-border trade was once seamless, many expressed dismay at the splitting of what was once a collective prosperity. A leading Spanish policymaker, whose measured insights were reminiscent of a seasoned historian, argued that while Brexit created pockets of opportunity, it equally spawned an extensive network of unintended consequences. Spanish industries, once buoyed by the predictability of EU policies, now face cumbersome bureaucratic hurdles that impede business growth and competitiveness. The overall sentiment among those affected in Europe was one of ambivalence, a recognition that while certain interests had been served, many others had been sacrificed in a bid to redraw economic lines. Looking across the Atlantic, I found that even in Latin America the reverberations of Brexit were being felt in unexpected ways. Political commentators in Argentina and Brazil described how the redefined relationship between the UK and the EU forced these nations to re-evaluate long-standing trade agreements and alliances. There was a genuine concern that the fracturing of a once unified European market would lead to a cascade of protectionist policies that could stifle global commerce. Asian economies, too, kept a close watch on the developments, with many policymakers in China and India discreetly recalibrating their own strategies in anticipation of new global economic patterns. These reflections serve as a potent reminder that decisions made in one corner of the world can have cascading effects on markets and communities continents away. Every reorganization, every policy adjustment, every economic setback and opportunity over these past 10 years is a chapter in an ongoing story that touches lives, tests alliances, and redefines national identities. My own journey through historical archives, boardroom analyses, and intimate conversations with individuals from every affected region has led me to a singular conclusion. Brexit is not merely an isolated political event but a transformative moment in our shared global history. The intricate dance between economic resilience, political pragmatism, and cultural identity continues to evolve, serving as both a lesson in the perils of division and a beacon for the promise of unity. As we stand at this historical juncture nearly a decade on, the pivotal question remains: who are the winners and who are the losers? For some, especially in sectors like technology and renewable energy, Brexit opened doors to innovation and reinvention. Others, particularly in the financial and manufacturing realms, have faced dislocation and diminishing prospects. The saga of Brexit is one of both ambition and consequence, a narrative that compels us to examine how choices made in the pursuit of national sovereignty can wield rippling impacts across an interconnected world. This documentary narrative, built on layers of economic data, political analysis, and heartfelt personal testimonies, draws attention not only to the winners and losers but also to the shared humanity that binds us all. The intricate web of trade, investment, and cultural exchange is a fragile structure that can be disrupted by decisions taken in the corridors of power. Yet even in its disruption, there emerges an opportunity to rebuild, one rooted in a commitment to unity, in understanding that our common destiny transcends borders, political allegiances, and economic interests. Now, as I wander through the busy streets of a European capital, I am struck by the resilience of communities that have been forced to adapt in the wake of monumental change. I see faces reflecting both caution and optimism, and I sense a collective yearning for a future built on collaboration rather than division. From the bustling markets of Madrid to the vibrant corridors of Latin America's financial centers, the message is clear. Global responsibility requires that we learn from our past missteps, fostering a spirit of international cooperation in a time when isolationist tendencies threaten to undermine progress. The long-term ramifications of Brexit remain a subject of heated debate and evolving analysis. Economic forecasts are continually revised and political alliances reformed as nations adjust their strategies. It is an unfolding experiment in modern governance, one that prompts us to consider the intricate balance between sovereignty and shared fate. Statisticians warn of continued volatility in the global markets, while sociologists highlight deep-seated cultural rifts that may yet heal if given time and mutual goodwill. The story of Brexit invites us to reflect on the importance of safeguarding democratic values and economic stability in an increasingly turbulent world. In closing, I cannot help but feel that the narrative of Brexit is a mirror reflecting our own collective vulnerabilities and hopes. This significant political milestone reminds us that while change is inevitable, our response to it can define the fabric of our societies. The intricate interplay between economic gains and losses, political ambition and regret, as well as social unity and discord, offers valuable lessons for every nation and community. As we look to the future, it is imperative that we rise above parochial interests and embrace the spirit of mutual understanding. Our shared journey calls on each of us to pursue unity over division and to recognize that the threads of global responsibility run deep across every border. May this chapter of our history serve as a catalyst, a clarion call for renewed collaboration, empathy, and a steadfast commitment to building bridges where divisions once stood. In a world beset by rapid change and unforeseen challenges, the lessons of Brexit inspire us to chart a course toward progress that values cooperation above all else. Almost 10 years after the referendum, the story of Brexit is not a tale of winners against losers, but rather a chronicle of how we all share in the pursuit of a better, more inclusive future. The economic fluctuations, political debates, and social narratives interweave to form a mosaic of human experience that tells us something fundamental about our era, that our destinies are intertwined. As I close this narrative, I invite every viewer to ponder not just the costs incurred, but also the potential for renewal and reinvention that lies ahead. Let our reflections be a testament to the enduring power of unity and global responsibility, reminding us that in a world built on shared destinies, every challenge is an opportunity to forge a new, brighter chapter together.